I decided I wanted to talk about lead generation today myself because we've had a lot of people asking questions around marketing. So lead generation. Now, what is it all about? Often when I talk to people in business, lead generation, everyone wants more leads. And I used to have a big argument about lead generation and say, you don't need more leads, you need more quality leads and less noisy leads. You need to spend more time in your lead nurture and you need to get better at conversion. And I think a lot of people get this, but there is a point in time, especially when you're a startup, or especially when you're on referral only, that lead generation becomes a thing. So what is the problem? Why do we need lead generation? The problem that we're solving here is simple. There's one statement, and I've mentioned it today, and it was drilled home to me over the past 6 months, which is fresh blood is the lifeblood of business. And the problem that we're solving here is that if I'm a sales guy and I have 10 leads and I chase those 10 leads and I don't have any new leads coming up, I will keep chasing and chasing. And one of the things that happens is if you're aggressive in your growth targets and you're not got enough leads coming in, you will end up becoming quite desperate in your sales process and you'll be chasing people that you shouldn't be chasing. So the problem we're trying to solve is that we really want to make sure that there's fresh lead flow coming into your business on a month-by-month basis, and it should be with minimal effort. The opportunity is simple. When we talk about leads and when we talk about a business that generates leads, if we're doing it correctly, if we have a systematic approach to lead generation, what we're going to do is we're going to be able to grow our business. We're going to be able to turn the volume up of the lead process so that if we need more leads, we can get them. Now, there's leads and there's leads, right? And the opportunity is to make sure we're getting high caliber leads coming into our business. So I want to talk about some principles around this in terms of lead generation, because I think for most people, this is an area, if I was looking through the chat earlier, that people did talk about that they needed some help in. And I'm going to give you the coach's view of the world. Now, first thing I mentioned is fresh blood is the lifeblood. And when we talk about lead generation for business, sometimes people are too busy. Right? Who's too busy to take on new business right now? There must be a couple of people on this call. Oh, there's no one. Awesome. So then you've got capacity, which gives me the other side of this problem. And the other side of this problem is that you don't have enough business coming in, and the capacity that you're not filling this month, at the end of the month, is gone. So who could double their business in terms of capacity over the next 6 months? Who could actually take on double? Okay, interesting. So I did this activity when I first started my coaching business, and I had a number in my mind of how many clients I wanted and how much time they would take. And what I realized is every month that I didn't achieve that number, I could not recover from that month. So if I wanted 10 clients and I only had 5, there was 5 spaces that I couldn't fill again because that month was over. Does that make sense? And so what I started to realize is if I've got capacity that's not full, what am I doing to fill it? And what I'm doing to fill it is I need to be more aggressive with my marketing. So I want to talk about a few principles around this. So this idea of fresh blood being the lifeblood of your business, it's about being committed to generating leads, being committed. Because my general statement from my experience of doing this for 20 years is most people don't market nowhere near enough. And what I mean by that is not physically, financially. They don't invest in marketing enough. They don't know which marketing channels work, and they're trying to work out how to minimize. And the way I know is if I look at your marketing budget, okay? If I ask people what their marketing budget is for their business, they generally either have a percentage or they have an idea, which is the least amount possible, okay? Now, if it's the least amount possible, or if it's 3 to 5%, because that's my industry standard, I'm going to suggest you're making that decision based on false information. Because the way that you should invest in your marketing is based on your capacity as a business. And what I mean by that is if it costs you $1,000 to get a client, and that client is worth $5,000 to you in profit, that's a pretty good return on your investment. So instead of saying 3%, what I'd be saying is, what's my capacity? How much can I afford to spend to fill that capacity? So I want to talk about this principle here, which is what's known as target offer copy, TOC. So when we do our marketing strategy, and anyone who's had a marketing company work with them, they'll know that the first thing a marketing company wants to know is, who is your target? So what we do is we have this notion of target market. The second thing they'll generally then talk about is, what are we going to offer them? Now, I know in our session with Dave Jennings, we talked about the offer, and we talked about what is that product that gets people in the front door. And we refer to it sometimes as the life raft product. What is the thing that gets them to engage? And then the last one that we need to talk about is, where do I advertise? So what is the channel? Now, when we talk about these 3 things, what is the target? Who is my target market? What is the offer? What is the thing that I'm going to use to get them to engage with me? The third question is, what channel should I be advertising in? Now, I've had people ask me, should I use Facebook or LinkedIn? Should I use this or that? And my answer is always the same. Don't ask me, ask your audience, because it's where your audience hangs around in concentration, which is where you should be spending your marketing dollar. So in simple terms, if we looked at these as order priority, identifying clearly who your target market is a 10 out of 10 for me in terms of priority. If you do not have this written in your marketing plan, and you have to be as specific as possible, we're going to do a bit of an activity on this right now, you cannot move forward to working out which channel and what the offer is. Now, when we talk about offer, we're talking about engagement methodologies. What is the thing that you use to get your prospect, your target market, to want to engage your company? So this offer here, I would give it a 5 out of 10 in terms of order of priority, which leaves the channel, which is, should I use LinkedIn? Should I use Facebook? Should I use Google Ads? That's the last thing that you should be asking. And in terms of priority, it's a 1 out of 10. So let's talk about each one of these individually. I want you to, in your notes, I want you to put the letters PFC, which stands for Perfect Future Client. I want you to get a blank page, and I want you to put that in the middle of that page. Perfect Future Client. Now, once you've done that, I'm going to get you around this page to identify all of the elements that resonate with what that perfect future client is. Okay. So the first thing might be things like their geographics. Where are they located? So it might be Australia. For some of you, it'll be more local than that. It might be Victoria. It might be wherever you're based. So the geographics. Locality. Are they transacting online? Do you need to visit them face to face? Your perfect future client, where do they exist? Okay. Geographics could also include the channels that they might be in. But then the second thing that I want to talk about is their demographics. And demographics, I want you to, right now, for your perfect future client. Now, remember, this could be someone you already have. That's awesome. And if you can identify them by name as a current client, that's a great way to start this process and say, Joe Bloggs is my perfect future client because I have him right now. I have a version of him and he's awesome. So then the question of demographics is going to be things like size. It might be income or revenue. If it's an individual, it'll be income. It might be other things about them, how many people are in their family, how many kids they have, where they live, what kind of house. So what is the demographics? What is the physical attributes of your perfect future client? I'm just going to give you a minute to just jot some notes down on this right now. So in your notes, demographics of your perfect future client. 1 minute. Who is your perfect client? If you're with someone else, you can have this conversation right now. What are the demographics? Is there an income that they earn together or separately? Is there a place that they live? Is there a number of people in their family or number of sites, number of employees in their business? Depends on who the perfect future client is for you. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to give me as much information about that person or that entity as possible. Now, bear in mind, for those guys who deal in corporate and larger entities, it's going to be someone within that organization that's your perfect future client. Because companies don't buy from companies, people buy from companies. So who is the person? So we're going to get into those details in a moment. Perfect future client. So the last piece of this puzzle is what we call psychographics. So the psychographics is all about buyer intent. So when you think about your current perfect future client, this person, this avatar, I want to know, what are the buying motives? What is the problem that you solve for them? What is the problem that you solve for them? What is the thing that keeps them up at night? What is the buyer intent? So what is the thing that's going to make them want to engage with you? So we've gone through the geographics, we've gone through the demographics, which is the size. But now I want to know why. What's the trigger? What's the psychographics? I'm just going to give you a minute and a half to think this one through and jot down some notes. What's the psychographics of your perfect future client? What is the driver that causes them to want to buy from you? What is the problem you solve? What is the aspiration that they have that you fulfill? Just 1 or 2 words if you're not sure. If you've already got this written down somewhere else, fantastic. But you should be knowing this off the top of your head. So we're painting a picture We're painting a picture of this perfect future client from 3 angles: where they are, who they are, and what drives their behavior. Okay. Perfect future client. Now, at the top of any marketing plan, this is the first piece of information that you'll need. Now, some of you will have multiple clients that you work with, so there'll be multiple versions of this. But for every marketing campaign, for every lead generation strategy, the more I can define this, the more accurate my targeting will be. The more I can define this, the more accurate my targeting will be. Everyone with me so far? Thumbs up if you're with me. Awesome. Okay. I want to talk about the offer. I've been reading a book recently, and I'm going to mention a few books as I go through today. Oh, by the way, I found this one today. If anyone hasn't read this, let me back to this screen. If you haven't got that on your bookshelf, Useful Beliefs by Chris Elder. It's not a very thick book. But if anyone's struggling with mindset right now within their business, if anyone's struggling with how do I handle these lockdowns, how do I handle these kids staying at home driving me nuts, just a little book that really helps with understanding how to have some useful beliefs. But the book I want to mention, because when we talk about business, when we talk about offers in business, it's called The $100 Million Offer. That one there. The guy who wrote it is a guy by the name of Alex Hormozi. And I'm literally only a third of the way through this book right now, and it reminded me of something that I forgot about. And he talks about the $100 million offer because he says, look, here's the problem. Most people, they know who their target market is. They know who they are. They speak to them all the time. But if their offer is not strong, and what he talks about is he talks about an offer that blows the doors off them, which means you don't have to be a good salesperson if you have a great offer. It reminded me about how often we are competing, right? We are competing. So I want to talk a bit about this structure around offers. We look at offers, right? And what we think about is, for most people, who's in a commoditized market? Who's in a market that's price competitive? Can I just get a show of hands for those guys? So if we look at offers, what we normally start off with, this value chain, is down the bottom, we have what's called a commodity. Now, a commodity by its very nature is something that is basically driven by price because it's always the same. Examples of commodities: petrol, sugar, anything that you buy in bulk that the brand is secondary to your decision, okay, is known as a commodity. And if you're in a commoditized business, the only way that you're going to win business in a commoditized market is through price, okay? So it's a very dangerous place to be because you can beat your competition by being cheaper, but it's a race to the bottom. So we've got to start thinking in terms of how do we move away from being a commodity. So when we move up the value chain, the next thing we do is we start to productize. So the next part of the value chain is what's known as a product. Now, the distinction between a commodity and a product is the brand. So some people will not put Liberty fuel in their car because it's a cheap brand. Other people say, I only go to Caltex because they have the best petrol. Now, I don't know, because I don't measure the performance of the petrol. I don't analyze it. All I know is that the brand carries a lot of weight for me. So people start to use the product, right, by brand as a way of differentiating in the commoditized market. So the value chain improves. And as we go up this formula, we move into a thing called service. Okay. So service can differentiate a product as well. So we can have something that's commoditized, you can brand it, it makes it better, and then you wrap service around it and it improves the value again. Is everyone with me on this? And then when we combine service and product together, we actually have quite a unique position. We have a thing called an offering. Okay, so that combines them. But we're really still talking about a very sort of rudimentary value add, because I can always claim better service than you. I can always sell the same products as you. So I can still compete with you on price. So there's a line that we draw here. And above that line, we start talking about something very different. And I know that we had one of our presenters today talked about this one, and she called it CLX, but I'll just abbreviate to experience. Now, people will pay more if they have a great experience working with an organization. Okay, it's been proven that time and time again, we can add value by making sure people's experiences are great. Now, one of the ways to make sure people are getting great experiences is to provide great service. But one of the better ways is to monitor it and measure it and improve it. And this is things like Net Promoter Score. We've all heard about using Net Promoter Score. We've used it. And the idea here is to make sure that not only do we listen to our clients, but we build a service that becomes something that they actually enjoy the experience of using. Okay. So when we talk about this offer within our business, we can move ourselves up this value chain by adding value to the product that we offer. Now, there's a couple of other levels that I just want to touch on, because if we go beyond experience, because I can give you a great experience working with my organization, but the thing that improves the value again is when I do this, when I start doing what's called transformation. Now, I know some of the guys on this call already offer transformation through their offering, right? They have their product and service, and when you use it, it changes your business or it changes your life, right? Transformation. So the offer, when you give people transformation as part of your product or service, you're increasing the value. Now, I'm not saying transformation that everyone else offers, because that's commodity. It's transformation that is unique to you. Transformation that is unique to you. So there's three levels above the line. The first one is experience. The second one is transformation. And probably the biggest one that I really wanted to touch on above here is what's known as risk reversal. Now, what do I mean by reversal is, how do I make your product a no-brainer? Which means that when people buy into your company, when they spend their first dollar with you, there is zero risk. There is zero risk, because that's how we start an engagement with someone who's not sure who you are. Now, I'll give you a bit of personal experience on this. When we employ people in business, it's generally, if I employ you, I have to pay you. So there's no risk reversal as an employer. I bring people on board and I have to then pay them, and then I do an evaluation period and I see if they perform. That's fine, because it's pretty hard to do a risk reversal. But if I was teaching someone how to get any job on the planet, I'd say the first thing you need to do is go and offer to work for nothing. Because if you go to a company and say, let me work here for 3 months, don't pay me a cent unless you think I'm worth it. What does that tell you about the employee? Okay. So my question to you today is, when we talk about the offer that you have to engage your leads, okay, not just the lead generation, because I can find names of your target market all day long. And I can put them in a database and you can start bashing them to death with marketing messages. But my question is, how do you move from them seeing you as just another provider, a commodity, to something that is totally risk averse to them, which is a no-brainer offer? Okay. So when we talk about this book that I've been reading, Alex Hormozi's book, he really tunes in on this. And I'm going to suggest, if you haven't read it, it's worth a read if you're stuck at this stage, right? Because for me, it's woken me up to something I knew years ago, right? Because this slide I'm giving you is not new. I borrowed this from a guy by the name of Marshall Thurber, and he talked about this whole idea of customer experience. And he said, in the customer experience world, it's all about getting them on board in the first place. And if you can transform their lives or their business or their situation, that's fine. But if they don't trust you, if they say, I'm not sure, because there's risk associated with it, you will lose people. You will lose people based on risk. So the question is, how do I get someone to engage in my organization without risk? So risk reversal is simple stuff like money back guarantees. It's try before you buy. It's like having a very small product where they can buy this thing with low risk, it's only a few dollars, and they engage with your organization. I hope this is making sense for everyone, because I'm just touching on the offer side. So we're talking about lead generation, and now we're talking about offers. Yes, because generating names is one thing. Getting those names to engage, right? Getting those people to want to do business with you or to show their interest or to qualify is about having some level of offer that can get them in the door. Remember, targeting, identifying your market, 10 out of 10. Offer, 5 out of 10. Now, here's the funny thing. What Alex mentions in his book, he says, if you've got the right offer, you don't need to be a good salesperson, because the offer will sell itself. And he says, this is the thing that's very scalable, because you can have an offer that's super unique. No one else is willing to do it. And all of a sudden, it becomes your salesperson. Because if it's a no-brainer to engage in your business in the first instance, then we don't need someone who's got a great presentation style who can close sales. I hope this is making sense for everyone. When I read through this and it just reawoken me to this area, I think sometimes we underplay the importance of having what we call a life raft product, a product that solves a problem for people, that has got no risk attached to it, so they can engage your business. Because the most common thing I hear from most people, once they're in the door with us, I can convert them and I can keep them no problem, but I can't get them to engage. Okay. So if we have a compelling offer, it actually takes away a lot of the stress of having salespeople chasing sales. Everyone with me? Put your thumb up if you're with me. Get it? Awesome. Let's keep going with this one. So we've talked about offer. Now, when we talk about awareness in the marketplace, It's one thing to have a great offer. It's one thing to know who your target audience is, but we've got to think about what is this process? Where are people at in their awareness stage? Now, if we talk about awareness, it comes in 5 levels. Okay. Now, the first one is that we can start in reverse, right? Down the bottom, we've got people that are unaware. Now, when I say unaware down here, what I mean is they don't even know they've got a problem, let alone about your product or service. They just don't have, you're not on the radar. So whatever you're selling to people who are unaware, the problem is they're not interested in talking to you because they don't need you, okay? So what happens is when people are totally unaware within their organization, the ability to sell to them is super difficult, all right? It's super difficult because the radar is not on. So it doesn't matter what your marketing materials are, you're a distraction to what they're currently doing. Now, if we go to the other end, right, at the top of this tree, we've got people who are fully aware, right? So they're fully aware. Now, what that means is that they're aware of your product, they're aware of your service, and they're aware of the problem that it solves, okay? And they're the ones that are ready to buy. Now, the good thing about people who are fully aware, they're generally a no-brainer to convert. But if we go in between those unaware and fully aware, there's 3 other stages, okay? Now, the first one is that if we go down here, they're probably problem aware, okay? So the step from unaware to problem aware means they have a problem, but they don't even know there's a solution. Now, when you market to someone who is problem aware, you have to market to the problem, not the product, okay? Not the solution or the product, okay? So it's a frustration that they may have, but they don't know the way out of it, okay? That's being problem aware, okay? So as we upgrade, we go, all right, there's now solution aware. So these guys are a little bit more educated because they realize that not only do they have a problem, but there is a solution to that problem in the marketplace, okay? And so solution aware people say, I need help with marketing, as an example. So they go, I know there's marketing companies out there, I need help with them, but they have no distinction between one marketing company or the other, or what channel should I use? So they go from being a problem aware, I don't have enough leads, to I need a marketing company. So then the final gap in here is product. Okay, product awareness, okay? Now, this is where they start realizing exactly what they need, okay? And so now they can go and compare apples with apples, all right? Now, the reason I'm showing you this scale is simple, is that when we go to market, if we don't take into account that the majority of people may not even know they have a problem, our marketing will be very ineffective, okay? So you'll have your target market, you'll go out to market and you say, hey, we're awesome, you should use us, here's our Life Raft product and you should buy it, it's no risk. And they're going, but we don't need it. We don't have a problem. And so how do I then educate that person and make them aware that they actually do have a problem? There is a solution, it's my product, and this is the way we engage. So this awareness part is one of the key elements that I think is missing when people put their marketing plan together, because they literally are single channel minded. They're always going for the low hanging fruit. They're going, once we've identified the target market, all we need to do is get them into an appointment and close. And for me, it's not quite that simple, right? It's actually about educating them on that way through. Now, you can fast track education. One of the ways to do that is lots of videos online. You can include that in your pre-sales engagement. You can do it through a presentation, a webinar. I don't mind how you do it, but acknowledge the fact that people are at different stages of awareness when they hit your funnel. And your objective with leads is to actually get them to engage in the journey. Now, the last one I wanted to touch on here is acquisition aggression. And I've already alluded to it and I'll mention it again. What I'm talking about here is this myth about how much should I spend on marketing. It's a myth, right? Because the question of how much should I spend on marketing should be dictated by what the return on investment is. Now, for acquisition aggression to be something that you acknowledge, the question I normally ask is how much are you currently spending on marketing? And the second question is, what is my acquisition cost? So there's 2 things. So acquisition cost, what is it? Measurable. And once I measure it, then I have a goal, which is to reduce it. And the other thing I need to know is what's known as lifetime value. Now, lifetime value is literally, it's not even how much money a client spends with you in their lifetime, it's what's the profit margin. Lifetime value needs to be measured in profit, not revenue, okay? Because the lifetime value, both of these are dollars, by the way. Once I know what it is in profit, then I can measure my acquisition cost as a return on investment. Is everyone following me on this? Now, the question I have, and the reason I say acquisition aggression, is there different levels of confidence in your marketing and willingness to spend money. But my suggestion is that your marketing budget should be determined by the return on investment, number one. And the only thing that should cap it is your capacity, right? So we need to be looking at a couple of things here, right? The first one is, what is my acquisition cost? Okay, measured. Now you can go through different channels and measure each channel. And once I know the number, right, I don't mind how much it is because it's just a measurement, right? It's a calculation. I need to work out how to reduce it. And that's how I compare my different strategies. And the second thing I need to know is, how much am I prepared to spend? So there's what's called acquisition costs, which is the actual cost measured. But then the real question that is easier to work with is, how much are you willing to pay to take on a new client? How much are you willing to pay? And for most people, they can't give me that answer. They go, it depends, which is not an answer. It depends actually causes this open chain of conditions. So my question would be, if you knew the perfect client, perfect future client, which we defined, and you knew that you trusted your company to maintain and hold that client, you could then calculate the lifetime value. Would that be fair to say? Yep. And so then what I want you to think about is, knowing that lifetime value of the perfect future client, what is how much are you willing to spend to acquire that client? Now, I don't expect an answer today, but I want you to play with this question, because I'll give you an example. I asked an accountant one day, because I know the numbers for accounting. Is there any accountants on the call? Okay, there's one. Okay, so accountants, right? Their average client spends about $5,000 a year on average, right? And some people are different, but let's just pick that number. And the average retention for an accountant is about 10 years. So that's 50,000 in revenue over a 10-year period. The next question I'll ask is, what is the margin on that? What is the margin? And they say, we work on a 20% margin. So that's $10,000 in margin. So then my next question was the hardest one. How much would you pay me for that client? Now, after you take all of that depends out of the equation, I go, no, it doesn't depend. That client that would stay for 10 years and pay 50 grand and give you 10 grand in profit margin, guaranteed over 10 years, how much would you pay? Now, their first number is $500. And I'll ask the question, would you pay 1,000? They go, yeah, I'd pay 1,000. What about 2,000? Oh, I don't know if I'd pay 2,000. And then we start to get this threshold. Now, that threshold is determined by what I call acquisition aggression. And here's the short answer. If I knew for a fact that guy was going to give me 5 grand, 10 grand over whatever the number is, 10 grand over 10 years, that's $1,000 a year. The question is, if I put $1,000 down, I get my money back in the first year. That's a pretty good bet. But would I pay 2 grand? Would I pay 3 grand? Would I pay 4 grand? And the answer is, if it was an immediate return, obviously you would. So I need you to be thinking about acquisition aggression. And I'm going to get you to go and do some homework for yourself, because the question I want you to answer is, what am I prepared to pay for my perfect future client? What am I prepared to pay? And that number, there's some conditions around it. As long as they stay and as long as they spend and as long as they're this and that, I don't care. It was your perfect future client. But you need to determine the amount of money you're willing to pay for that client, because that's going to give you a sense of what your marketing budget should really be. Okay, not the least amount possible, not 3% of revenue, but what am I prepared to pay for that client? So now that we assess your risk category, we can start playing with some real money, because like I said at the start, most people underinvest in marketing. They underinvest by miles because they think they can do it better, or they're looking for the magic wand and it doesn't exist. Marketing is about spending money to find people who need your service. And as long as you've got some level of return on your investment, it's an investment, okay? But if you don't know how much you're willing to spend, then what it does is it strangles your business, because every month that you don't meet that capacity can't be backfilled. So when you get comfortable with your marketing system and your retention, you will spend more money. When you spend more money, you will build your business super quick, okay? And especially when times are tough, like now, when people are going into lockdown mode, they spend less on their marketing, which means your acquisition cost will actually reduce. And for me, that's exciting, because when the cost of AdWords goes down, I'm willing to spend. Last thing I want to talk about in this area is this. It's called the spinning plates. And this is how marketing needs to look, right? You need 10 marketing strategies running in parallel. You need 10. Now, this includes lead nurture, by the way. So it includes things like newsletters, networking, whatever it is for you. And the reason you want 10 marketing strategies working is because there's a synergy that occurs. When I have 10 spinning plates going at the same time, and I use the metaphor of spinning plates, is that each marketing strategy will bounce off the other. Sometimes we cannot work out where our leads come from because they Google us, but they didn't Google us because they decided to Google us. They Googled us because they saw an ad. They didn't see the ad because it was in front of them. It was a friend of theirs. And so it's very hard to track lead source, okay? What I will suggest to you, if you have one marketing strategy, you're leaving money on the table. So the trick is to build 10 marketing strategies that produce 10% of your leads each. Now, how does this look? It looks literally like saying I have a list of marketing strategies that mix between lead nurture and lead generation, and they're all measurable and they run in parallel and they have measurement on them so I know they're doing all right. Now, the reason I use the spinning plate metaphor is because it takes a lot of effort to get a marketing strategy up and running. And once it's up and running, the plate's spinning, you can go to the next one. But the plate's not going to spin forever. The market changes, the strategy dies, it needs to be resuscitated, and you go back and you spin that plate up again. So I don't want you to create 10 strategies at once. I want you to create a list of what are my 10 by 10 strategies and which one am I working on next. And until it's a spinning plate, don't go and start trying spinning 5 plates together, because trying to implement 5 marketing strategies at once is messy, okay? But just get in mind that I have an acquisition aggression, which is how much am I prepared to spend? And then I go to work in starting to build these channels. And if you do this effectively, you will get to 10. It's not as many as you think, right? Because social media is one. You can have 3 channels in social media. You can have 3 channels on email. You need to decide what they are. You need to define them. And then you need to decide in what order I'm going to do those so I get my best bang for buck. I hope this is making sense for everyone, because it's an important piece of the puzzle. And really, I just wanted to touch on lead generation more from a coaching perspective today. In terms of what strategies should I use to generate leads, you decide. All right. Here's one thing I've learned with strategy. When people say, should I use LinkedIn or should I use this or should I use that? The answer is yes. Pick one. Go with it, do the maths on it, learn the channel, find the experts, get them to see if they can get it to work and invest money. You will waste money on marketing, I guarantee it, but you cannot steer a parked car. You cannot steer a parked car. So if you do not know what to do in marketing, start with what you think is the best channel and be prepared to lose money on it. But the trick is don't throw the money away, right? When you learn, when you test marketing out, you get the results, you make the analysis, you make the change and you go back. And the other thing that Paul Hermosi says in his book, Alex Hermosi, I should say, is he says most people give up too early. They try a strategy once and they bail. And he said, here's the thing. You go into a marketing channel, you test it, you adjust it, you test it, you adjust it, and be prepared to lose a few dollars on the way. But don't quit too early. Because when you quit too early, then you don't get any of the lessons. And I've had people say, I tried Google advertising, it didn't work. I say, well, which part? We spent a lot of money and we didn't get any clients out of it. I go, there's no granularity here. Was it the ad? Was it the offer? Was it the engagement? Was it the speed? If you don't analyze the components, you can't go back and improve it. So the trick here is to be prepared that marketing will cost you a lot of money, but it should also return you a lot of money. And as long as you've got that mindset, it's not about putting all your money on black, right? It's about saying, I don't mind failing in my marketing. I don't mind trying things out, as long as I get the feedback and I use that to correct my journey. So the takeaways from this session is if you don't have, at least in your business plan, a marketing section that has the description of your perfect future client in it, that's your first strategy card, capture card. Define my perfect future client. If you do have that and you don't know what your acquisition numbers are, acquisition cost, and what you're prepared to spend, then working out acquisition aggression could be your strategy card. If you've got both of those under your control and you don't have your 10 by 10 listed, I don't mean implemented. I want you to start identifying what are the potential 10 marketing strategies that I should be implementing, and then picking one of those. Then you put 10 by 10 at the top of your strategy card. Okay, they're the 3 things that could come out of this session. And I need you to add that to your pile of strategy cards, which you should have by now. You should have quite a number of these floating around, hopefully 3 or 4 or 5. And if you haven't got any of them, there you go, pick a card, any card like that. It's got the fan going, Adrian. I need you to write these down, because right now we're going to start summarizing everything we've done today. So let's wrap up that session with what were your top 3 lessons into your notes about lead generation. What are the things you must do? I'll just get you to write those into your notes before we move into the consolidation phase of today. Cool. Just give you 30 seconds. What are the top 3 things you picked up out of that session? And maybe into the chat box with some of the distinctions. What's the thing that resonated with you most? Into the chat box. Awareness pyramid. Thank you. 10 channels, 100%. What else? What's resonated with you most out of that session? Acquisition aggression level. Yeah. I only understood that about 3 months ago because I know acquisition cost all day long, but there's 2 questions. How much is it costing you now? But how much are you prepared to spend? Now, remember, it doesn't mean you throw all your money down. It's just, what are you willing to pay for a client? Because that sets a very different marketing budget. Pump up the aggression, 100%. Creating risk-averse offers. This is a ripper. If you can create a no-brainer offer for your market to engage with you and get them in the front door, you've just improved your sales process out of sight. Thanks for sharing that one. Offering added value beyond service. Yeah, thanks, Kate. Risk reversal for Narelle, awareness and approach to marketing, and 10 channels and no-brainer offers. Brilliant. Psychographics, right? Determining the problem that you're solving. Yeah. When your marketing talks to the person's voice inside their head, the conversation that's already occurring, that's when you'll get people to engage with you. Trying to sell them your product or service if they're unaware is tough. Yep. Harry, marketing awareness determines the message in the marketing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we can see I've launched this idea of lead gen as not just where do I buy leads from? It's really about making sure that we're getting those people into a funnel and a process so that we can engage them in our business.